It was said that the Sonoran Desert could swallow even the most seasoned cowboys whole, and Ethan Shaw, a 28-year-old ranch rider born under the blistering sun of Texas, found that out the hard way the moment his horse died beneath him and left him to wander like a ghost toward whatever water or mercy the land might spare. His lips cracked, his eyes burning with sand and heat, his mind replaying his sister's advice: never travel alone, never trust the desert, never assume you're stronger than the earth. And as he stumbled, boots sinking in the shifting dust, he thought he heard the wind whisper his name in a tongue older than the railroad and older than any frontier man could ever understand, until the darkness took him, and the last thing he saw before collapsing was a blur of braided black hair and painted faces moving silently across the dunes like spirits of the land who had come to claim him. When he awoke, it was to the sound of crackling fire and the scent of smoke intertwined with sage. His wrists tied in woven sinew, his jacket gone, shirt torn open to allow air to reach his battered ribs, he blinked up into the dark eyes of a woman who stood over him with an expression that was neither hostile nor tender, simply powerful eyes like obsidian in moonlight. And when she spoke, her voice was firm, commanding, and melodic. "You are in the lands of the Chiricahua. I am Nalinah, daughter of the mountain passes, keeper of the northern hunt, queen by burden, not by choice." Ethan, instinctively defiant yet humbled by exhaustion, coughed a dry laugh. "Well, if you're the queen, I suppose I should have brought a gift." And the warriors around him murmured, surprised by his audacity, until Nalinah raised her palm and silence returned as if the wind itself obeyed her. She regarded him like a hawk studying prey, no trace of fear in her demeanor, only a strange curiosity, and said, "We found you half dead. A lesser rider would be bones for the coyotes." Ethan swallowed, remembering the vultures circling overhead, and replied, "Some would say I ain't lesser, just unlucky." But his attempt at humor crumbled when she tilted her head and replied in a whisper meant only for him, "Spirit or curse, we will see." He was certain then she could see through people as easily as desert glass. Let the sun pass through it, and every instinct he had trained from bar fights, cattle deals gone wrong, nights spent sleeping beside loaded rifles told him to tread carefully. The tribe camp was tucked between red rock formations shaped like shattered teeth, warriors on horseback patrolling the perimeters, women tanning hides, children painting arrows, and an old shaman tending the fire pit with smoke that seemed to coil upward like serpents twisting toward the stars. They were not savages, as town drunks in saloons like to spit between broken teeth. They were organized, guarded, rooted deeply in land and tradition in a way settlers could never replicate. Nalinah cut his bindings after a long stare and spoke again, "You live." For now, Ethan flexed his wrists, nodding. "I ain't here to fight your people." And she countered, "Everyone who steps on this land thinks they are hunters until they learn they are cattle for the vultures." The statement lingered like a blade against his throat, and he looked around only to see a group of young warriors watching him, daring him to try and run so they could prove their worth. When he asked where his horse was, Nalinah's eyes softened in an unexpected flash. "The desert claimed it, but it carried you far. A loyal creature." Ethan bowed his head, honoring the animal, and that small gesture made the queen pause as if reevaluating him. It was rare, perhaps, to see a man grieve his horse rather than boast of his own survival. That night he was given water, clean hide bedding, and food: corn cakes drizzled with mesquite honey, strips of roasted rabbit, and wild berries so sweet they startled his tongue after days of starvation. And though many eyes followed him, none challenged him openly, because Nalinah's shadow fell over him the entire time. Not as a captor exactly, but something else, as though her authority had already decided his fate. When dawn arrived, the sun poured gold across the canyon, and he found himself summoned to her fire circle where she sat cross-legged, surrounded by tribal council, elders with stern faces, warriors painted in ash gray and ochre, and medicine women marked by spirals of turquoise powder streaked across their cheeks. The queen spoke first. "You are here not by our choice nor yours. The spirits guided my hunters to your body. That matters." He wanted to laugh at the idea that some invisible force had dragged his miserable carcass across the desert like a lucky charm. But one look at her gaze killed that impulse. Instead, he asked cautiously, "So what happens now? You send me home?" And the eldest woman hissed through worn teeth, "Home? You speak of fences and rails and stolen land as if it belongs to you. You Americans plant flags in dust and call it your birthright." Ethan lifted his hands in peace. "I ain't planting anything. I work cattle. I keep to myself." A young warrior spat beside him. "A thief says he only steals a little." Nalinah raised her hand, silencing the argument, and leaned forward so close that Ethan could see the intricate beadwork braided into her hair, turquoise stones that shimmered like captured lightning, and said with the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders, "War will not be avoided forever. Men from the east cut our hunting routes, poison our rivers, and bury their dead on sacred ground." Ethan inhaled slowly, unsure how to answer, because he understood then that no matter what he said, he was not a single man. In their eyes he was the embodiment of every rancher, prospector, cavalryman, and preacher who had ever trespassed upon their lands. But something strange happened. Instead of condemning him, the queen dismissed the council and motioned him to follow her up a narrow path, along the canyon wall, winding past eagle nests and sun-baked carvings etched centuries ago. They reached a plateau where the wind tasted clean, and the desert stretched endlessly, shimmering like a mirror laid across the earth. And there she finally spoke in a tone stripped of politics and ceremony. "My people have survived every winter, every drought, every invasion. But leadership requires more than survival." Ethan leaned against a boulder, still sore, still wary. "I don't follow." Nalinah turned slowly until she faced him fully, and her expression was solemn as she spoke the words that would change everything. "A tribe without heirs is a tribe waiting to die. My bloodline is the last of the Sun Mothers. I need a child, a future, and the spirits chose you." Ethan nearly choked on air, staring at her as if she'd declared herself the moon incarnate. He shook his head. "I don't know who told you. I'm some kind of miracle, but I ain't the answer to your problems." She stepped closer, sunlight kissing the gold dust embedded in her braids, and said without anger, "Not miracle, balance. You carry wounds of earth and sky. A man who respects the death of his own horse is not a man who creates children and abandons them." The memory of his younger sister Rhea, lost to fever because he didn't bring medicine fast enough, stabbed him in the heart, and he found himself whispering through clenched teeth, "You don't know me." Nalinah's hand rose, to fingers brushing the thin scar across his collarbone, not in a lustful way but in a recognition of pain. He trembled at the contact, unsure whether it was fear, shock, or something primal and ancient stirring beneath his ribs. "I know enough," she murmured. "You are a man who fights himself the way warriors fight armies." Ethan took a step back, but the wind seemed to push him forward again, and the weight of her presence was intoxicating, not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she carried herself with the certainty of a thunderstorm. He had met widows, heiresses, and barmaids who flirted like gamblers holding bad cards, but never someone who spoke with prophecy in their throat and dared him to live up to a destiny he had never asked for. "You're talking about making a child as if it's a treaty," he muttered, and she answered instantly, "It is. A treaty between blood and soil." He tried to laugh, because that was how he handled terror and affection alike. "You want me to be, what, your husband?" She shook her head, hair swaying like a raven's wings. "You do not understand. Husbands break vows. Lovers betray. A father endures." The wind roared across the plateau, rattling dried yucca stalks, and Ethan found that the world below looked different from up here. Smaller, insignificant, like the cattle trails and saloon rumors he once cared about were nothing compared to the legacy she spoke of. But he also understood the risk. If he accepted, he would never walk back into civilization as the same man. If he refused, he might not walk away at all. He stared at her and said, voice low and steady, "If I say no, what happens?" Nalinah did not flinch. "You return to the desert. The spirits will decide whether you live or die." His heart pounded like horses across a plain, and he studied her face-strong jawline, cheekbones shaped like carved stone, eyes that held galaxies of memory, and finally whispered, "And if I say yes?" Her answer came without hesitation. "You belong to us, not as a prisoner, not as property, As the man who will carry our future into the world, Ethan swallowed, and the silence was a blade resting on the edge of his decision. He pictured a small child with his eyes and her fire, running barefoot through the desert, knowing both languages of the land and the frontier, learning to hunt deer at dawn and mend fences at dusk, a bridge between two worlds neither side understood. He breathed deeply, ragged, terrified, exhilarated, and then he nodded, because something in him finally recognized the truth that the desert had tried to tell him. In every life, there is a moment when you stop being the person you were born as and become the person you are meant to be. Nalinah stepped closer, eyes glistening like night stars caught in obsidian, and she touched his cheek gently, reverently. Then the spirits have chosen well. She led him back to the camp, not as a captive but a man reborn. And though murmurs rose around them, no one challenged her decree. Even the elders bowed their heads, accepting fate as they would accept rain after drought. That night, beneath a canopy of constellations older than every empire on earth, Ethan stood with her by the fire, and their connection deepened, not rushed, not forced, but slow as dusk sinking into dawn, to hearts learning to breathe in unison. And if you want to know what happened next, how Ethan learned to hunt with the tribe, how he earned the respect of warriors who once called him intruder, how he grew to love Nalinah not because she demanded an heir, but because she showed him a world that civilization could never teach them. Subscribe to this channel right now, because the story of the Queen's heir, the battles they fought, and the legacy they forged is just beginning, and you do not want to miss what comes next.